Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Dr. Kathy Owens-Oliver, and I am founder of Educational Effectiveness Group. It is Tuesday. I've been consistent with my Newsday Tuesday conversations with you all, and so I'm just getting around to this one today. I've really been pontificating these last few days about all of the race matters happening across the country, not just police brutality, but all of the race issues that this country has grappled with for a really long time, and some of the conversations that we either refuse to have or haven't known how to have, particularly in schools. So I just want to share my thoughts on how we might begin to have some of the hard conversations as we rethink back to school and as we prepare to reopen schools, whatever that is going to look like. In our conversations about COVID-19, about safety, about social distancing, about wearing masks or not, about school schedules, whether students will go back, Monday, Wednesday, half day Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, half day Friday, in all of our conversations about teacher layoffs, those who are retiring, and a lot of newcomers coming into the profession who may now be even less prepared than they have been in times past. As we have these conversations, we have to talk about race. Race matters. This exceeds U.S. history. The argument about how slavery is or isn't addressed in history classes is an ongoing one, but we have turned a new page across the whole world, and we have to have a real conversation now about race. We have to stop pretending as though we are colorblind. Black people have to stop saying, I have white friends, and white people have to stop saying, but I have black friends, because the conversation is so much deeper now, especially when it comes to school. And not just school, but other entities in which we're all affiliated. We have to have the race conversation now in a way we haven't before. Glenn Singleton, someone that I know, has a whole workshop and excellent materials around critical conversations about race. But before we can even get to the conversation, we have to come to some level of confession and admitting the fact that race is an issue. And so when it comes to schools, I'm talking about how we identify our colleagues in a school environment primarily by the color of their skin. The new black teacher, we say, the black student teacher, the Middle Eastern teacher who just came to our school or joined our team. You know how we do these things. The woman who has everything covered up, whatever religion that is. You know, some of the conversations and some of the comments that we've been making in the workplace as educators, the conversations that I and some of my black colleagues have had around, is it because I'm black, or is it because she's white, or this, well, you understand how some of these white teachers feel about our kids or our sons. Now it is not a text message. It is not a conversation in the privacy of our homes. It is not a personal one-on-one conversation in the teacher's lounge anymore. Race is something we have to talk about out loud. When students go back to school in whatever structure school will be this fall, race is something that will have to be addressed. The teaching profession continues to be 70% middle-aged white female. Even with many of them retiring, most of the new teachers coming into the teaching profession are still white females. There's a shortage of males, black and white. There's a shortage of younger teachers. Most younger professionals are not going into teaching, not only because of low salaries, but because of opportunity the growth continuum, moving up the professional ladder, benefits, being able to take care of their families, the money they can make as entrepreneurs, edupreneurs, what the online environment offers them. So the teaching profession will continue to look the same, primarily middle-aged white women, even though there has been a huge push around cultural responsive pedagogy and why we need more Black and brown teaching professionals, male and female, in the classroom, we are not there yet. So we have to work with what we have, both for the students as well as the teachers. I have had the great privilege as a professional developer, as a leader of professional learning across this country and Canada, to work with so many Black and white colleagues and other teaching professionals who are extremely diplomatic, extremely kind and professional in how they handle each other in person. But behind closed doors, there are things we say that we would not, could not, should not say in a professional arena. There are questions that we want to ask, but we would not, could not, think that we should not ask in a professional arena. Now, folks, we got to have the conversation. White teachers need to be given the freedom to say, this is what I don't understand about young Black boys, and this is what I need help with. Black teachers need to be given the freedom to say to their white colleagues, this is how it makes me feel when you say this, when you ask me this question. If it is about my hair, if it is about my teaching strategies, if you think I'm showing favoritism to Black and brown students, we need to have the conversation. White teachers need to be able to say, I don't know how to get through to him or how to get through to her. I'm doing everything I can to help them learn. But when it comes to cultural responsiveness, I don't feel I have a good handle on it, and I've not received the appropriate training. Black teaching professionals also need to be able to say, here are some of the limitations that I have because I didn't grow up in an environment that some people assume that I did. We have to have the conversation. I have friends across the teaching profession who one-on-one have said to me, I'm so glad I can have this conversation with you because I could not say this out loud, or I could not say this to my Black colleagues with whom I work. And Black professionals have said to me, I can't say this. Well, you know, Kathy, we can't talk about this around them. All of these backdoor, closed closet, behind the scenes, privacy of your own home, personal friend soirees in which we've said it just the way we wanted to say it. We have to have those conversations now. Race matters in every arena, but you know my forte is education. Race matters more in the classroom now than it ever has before. As a teacher, you don't get to clock in and clock out. Teaching is a vocation. It's like a ministry. Whether you're at the grocery store or the bank or Target, wherever you happen to be, the beach, when a student or former student or parent of one of your students sees you, you're still Mrs. So-and-so, the math teacher, Mr. So-and-so, the history teacher. And so children look to us to educate them through our life work, our whole life, who we are and what we do. And so we have to get really clear on who we are and who we're not, what we think, and what we'd like to say about racial issues, and we just need to have the conversation. I'm putting a plug in here for my business, Educational Effectiveness Group. We do cultural responsive pedagogy and dealing with inequity, understanding and responding to the achievement gap, professional learning and development for teachers and whole staff of schools. We do all of that. But whether you engage my company or not, if you are a school-based professional, a district-based professional, or a state education agency, if ever you had to have the real conversation around Black and white, and I do mean Black and white, it's time to have that conversation. The environment is ripe for it. I'm going to see if I can share this experience without crying, because every time I bring this up, I get a little weepy. But Last weekend before last, I was out running some errands. It was a Saturday, and I came to an intersection, and there were two white people, a man and a woman. They looked like, I assume they were married. They had a young child with them. She looked like she might have been 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that age group. And they were holding up signs that say Black Lives Matter. Ooh, I'm getting weepy. It was probably about 88, 90 degrees. And I pulled up to the intersection and I saw them. They were at a corner where a grocery store was. Just these two white people, a white family, which I assume is husband and wife and their young child. And why they felt it was appropriate in 90-degree weather to be standing on the corner with their elementary school child holding signs. The man's sign said, Black lives do matter. The woman's sign said, white silence is complicit. And I can't even remember what the little girl's sign said because I became so emotional. And I rolled the window down and I started yelling out my window, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to pull over, get their number, give them mine, say to them, can we be friends? I wanted to tell them I'm a teacher. I grew up in a single parent family. I grew up poor in a rural environment. I was the first one in my family of 8 children my mother had to take the traditional route to going to a 4-year college on a full scholarship. And I just want to say thank you. I wanted to tell them that my whole childhood, I went with my mother to her second job to clean the homes of white people on nights and weekends, and I would be in their house wondering, how do white people live like this? It looks like they just have everything. When I grow up, I want to have this stuff. As a young girl, I prayed. Are you ready for this? I told God, why didn't you let me be white? Because I felt like if I were white, I'd have more privileges, I'd have more opportunities. Life would not be so hard. I wouldn't have to go with my mom to clean other people's toilets and closets and carpet and windows in addition to her full-time job. So I was yelling out the window to them, thank you. Thank you so much for standing up, for having an opinion, for making the sacrifice, for being out here in the heat in a busy intersection in front of a grocery store to let people know that you don't judge people by the color of their skin. Their child will go back to school this fall in some capacity somewhere. They probably have been to school, not just K-12, but maybe college or what have you, but they felt like they needed to take a stand and make a statement. Listen, this is coming to school. You can apply what I'm saying to a lot of different fields, but you've heard me say I focus primarily on the educational arena. And this country stands on the shoulders of the educational system, I promise you. So if there was ever a time that we need to get it right with young children, we need to get it right despite COVID. Can I say that? We need to get this right. If we were able to put the COVID focus aside just for a few moments, we have a major racial dissonance issue that has been brewing for years, and it has been pervasive throughout our educational system, and now is the time to address it. I do have solutions. I do have strategies. I do have conversation starters. That's not what this particular video is about. I'll come back with that later. Tonight, I really want to just raise your consciousness, raise your awareness. Parents, please have this conversation with your children. If they happen to see on television what you've been trying to protect them from, if they happen to see on YouTube that a Black man was strangled to death because 4 policemen sat on his body or what have you, you're going to have the conversation. If they happen to see a Black man running away from policemen in a Wendy's parking lot and being shot in the back 3 times, if they happen to hear that one of the bullets went through the car because it was a stray bullet that could have harmed somebody, if they happen to hear or see on television that that Wendy's was burned down and there was looting just like that in Minneapolis, if they happen to see or hear or learn or be told by one of their friends, this goes all the way back to Rodney King. Who is Rodney King? Parents, whether you are Black, white, red, or yellow, Now is the time to have the conversation. And so, school leaders, you've got to have this conversation about race relationships and about bias, positive bias, and negative bias. People have biases they don't even realize that they have. Listen, we were all raised in an environment, and to a certain extent, we're all products of our environment. So we have some of our mother, our grandmother, our great grandmother, our great great grandmother's tendencies, ideas, perspectives, assumptions, even prejudices and biases. We have to own it and we have to just work through it. And if we do that as adults, then we can also do that with our children. So race matters at school, and we need to get a handle on what we're going to do about it and how we're going to address it. Are you ready for this? There are a lot of young African males who will be returning to school angry. They're angry right now because they identify with Trayvon Martin. They identify with Freddie Gray. They identify with Deonna Taylor. They identify with George Floyd in ways that you can never imagine. And it is not just about he's black, I'm black, now we can identify. It's so much deeper than that. It is historical. So we have to be prepared of how to deal with that. Both white teachers as well as black teachers, we have to be prepared for what students bring with them to school. I say all the time, children bring their baggage. You know how you say to people, leave your drama and your baggage outside the door. You can't do that in the classroom. Everything that kids are carrying, they're bringing it in the classroom with them. So we have to deal with this. But listen, it won't just be young black males who are angry. There will be white males and females, black females who are angry as well. Your professional colleagues will be angry as well. Some not angry, some will be bewildered. Many will still be hurting. People will be confused. We have to have the conversation. I think we've just been afraid to have this in the educational arena. So we've skipped over it in history and social studies classes, and we've whispered it to just our own friends. We found the one white friend we could keep it real with, or we found the one black friend we think we can keep it real with and ask the real questions. Got to have the conversations now. We have to have professional development, staff development, professional learning around this with and for teachers before they even go back to school. We're in an online environment. It's time to get started. We need to give teachers strategies, tips, in their toolkit, conversation starters, assignments, activities, writing assignments. How will they be able to address in the classroom this national pandemic as well as the race issues and in some cases wars across this country? I watched a virtual conference today about an online technology tool and how you could use this platform to grow your business. And at the end of the conference, after it was over, when most people had signed off or had begun to sign off, they were playing clips of George Floyd's funeral. And I thought, what a strategically stealth but intentionally designed idea to be presenting clips from his funeral. This online company was letting whatever watchers who were still out there know Black lives matter, white lives matter, human lives matter, but we need to have the Black lives conversation with students and children, and we need to have it now. I've been watching on television, on the news, where several reporters will say that we're getting ready to show you some footage that could be disturbing. I've heard people say if you don't want your children to watch this, then you can dismiss them. Someone posted in one of the online teacher groups that I participate in that she wanted to talk to her athletic team about what happened with George Floyd, and parents wrote to the school to tell the principal, this is not allowable for me. I don't want her having this conversation with the athletes, even in an online character development, encouragement, fun, social get-together time that the coach was still having. Since they weren't actually playing the sport, this was her way of staying connected with them. But she wanted to have the conversation because they were asking questions. But several of the parents wrote in to say, this is inappropriate, and I don't want to have this conversation with my children. We have to have the conversation. Parents, we need to have the conversation with you. Teachers need to have the conversation with each other. State departments and school districts need to have the conversation because race matters at school. Parents who are listening to me during this particular video, have this conversation with your children at home. Don't shy away from it. Don't pretend that it didn't happen. Don't pretend like it doesn't matter. Have the conversation and listen. Have the conversation the best way that you can. You don't know what would possess this policeman to take this approach. You feel bad that this happened. You think it is horrible. You don't know why this continues to happen. Maybe you do know why and you do know what to say. Research it, but listen, you have to start somewhere and you have to have the conversation. Teachers in particular, you need to be prepared for how you're going to address this and how you're going to relate to students who don't look like you, black or white. All of us as teachers have to be prepared for how we're going to relate and build a rapport with all of our students, but we're going to have the black and white conversation. Is it okay with you if I say that? Race matters at school, and we're going to have the black and white conversation. We've been avoiding it for a very long time. We've gotten away with it. In some cases, we've done well managing that conversation not taking place in school buildings, but it's going to have to take place now. Even if we're not in school buildings, it's going to have to take place online. If you're an education leader and you happen to see this video and be listening to me, please, in all of your planning for rethinking back to school, give careful, serious consideration to two really, really important things. One is the lack of preparation that most of the new and novice teachers are coming into this profession with, which includes understanding inequity and culturally responsive teaching and learning. Number two, take into consideration what your larger audience, your larger population of returning teachers will look like, who they are, how long they've been teaching, what's associated with their background, what their approach has been, who they've been effective with, in which areas they've not been effective, and how do you provide the appropriate, realistic, current professional development for your staff. Now, if you're not an educator and you're watching this video, this applies to your job, to your church, to your business that you own, and to your whatever organization that you lead. You still have to have the conversation. Race matters there as well. I'm being particularly emphatic about education because that is certainly the bedrock, the preface, the foundation of everything that we do in this country. Every job most people had, they had to get some kind of education from wherever they got it. So we really do have to have this conversation. It was not until I was a sophomore in college that I came into a real understanding and appreciation of what it means to be Black. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because my Black experience had so much darkness, so much lack, so much limitation in my early years that I was just bewildered of I wasn't even sure how to be proud of being born Black. I certainly don't want to offend any of my African American friends, family, and colleagues. I'm just saying to you that in school, the racial divide was so clear. So I don't know why we pretend in schools like kids don't get it. I've heard people say, oh, children, they just love each other and they don't know the difference. That may be true for a time, but the more life happens, the more they recognize how much skin tone, skin color, and ethnic background plays out in the decisions that are made for and about them, how they're taught in classrooms, how quickly they get written up or suspended from school, why zero tolerance applies more to them than any of their other counterparts at school. So it was not until I took Black Studies 101 with Dr. Angela Rohn at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro that I came into a full understanding of what it means to be Black, how to celebrate Blackness, what is good about it, why it's not a curse, how it is so much a part of making me who I am, and why it has been so unfortunate that I was finding myself at 19 years old just learning about who I really am and why that's a good thing. So if that has happened to me in my own life, then you can imagine how much emphasis I have put on educating others, but you can only imagine what the great need is for Black and brown children all over this country. So race matters at school. We need to have the conversation, and you have to start somewhere set some ground rules, make it social. But if you're an education leader, you need a plan and a strategy for how you're going to address the inequity gap, not just the achievement gap, the inequity gap. How you're going to appreciate and provide practice and study and preparation and culturally responsive teaching and learning, and how you're going to get people who are across the ethnic river looking at each other on both sides to be able to come together, how you're going to cultivate those interpersonal relationships and build a strong rapport among your teaching staff. Thank you for listening in to Newsday Tuesday. You can follow me on YouTube and all social media at DrCathyO. You're welcome to visit my website, DrCathyO.com. Reach out to me, Educational Effectiveness Group. We help you solve problems that improve your school from the inside out. Have a good evening. Thank you for joining.